Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar by Product School. My name is Sandhya Ganesh, and I'm super excited to be sharing ways in which you can ace your product execution for complex products. Before we dive deep, wanted to do a quick introduction about myself. I've been a product manager for over 7 years now and have been in the tech industry for 10 plus years. Currently, I lead the user growth product team at Tinder, and my team focuses on new user acquisition, activation, retention, incentivization, and creating viral growth loops for the app. Before Tinder, I worked at Amazon, Lending Club, and also Deloitte Consulting, where I started my career. I was really fortunate to have worked across different product types and domains throughout my career, and I have worked on domains ranging from consumer products, AI and ML products, ad tech and marketing tech products, and growth experiences. When I'm not doing PM work, I'm extremely passionate about mentoring other product managers and helping them either get into product management or helping them accelerate their career in this space. What I've really aimed to do with this presentation is try to gather all the insights, learnings, and tactics that I have learned throughout my experience that have helped me execute on products effectively and has led to successful launches. I hope you can take some of these insights, learnings, and tools from this presentation and apply that in your own product job. A quick disclaimer before we get started. Opinions expressed in this presentation are solely my own and do not reflect the views or opinions of my employer. A quick overview of the agenda we will be covering today. First, we're going to start off with what product execution is and why it is so important. Second, we're going to talk about common mistakes leading to execution failures. Third, we're going to talk about key components of effective execution. And we're going to end with the intangibles, few drivers of mastering product execution that is less talked about. What is product execution? Simply put, it's the process of turning an idea into a tangible experience that customers can use. Why is it so important? I'm going to quote Daniel Ek, the CEO and co-founder of Spotify. He once said in an interview that ideas are 5%, execution is 95%. And he couldn't have said it any better. Execution is what takes your vision and your idea and turns it into reality. It is what truly drives product and business outcomes. Imagine that you have a beautifully crafted strategy and vision document and a really well thought out product roadmap. Well, none of that really matters if you don't execute on that effectively, if it does not see the light of day and is not in the hands of your users. It is also really important to get your execution right because a PM's credibility in a company is really improved or set with their ability to execute, with their ability to get shit done. The reputation of the PM is built based on how consistently they can deliver product experiences with quality in time, despite of constraints, despite of challenges, despite of shifting priorities, and really achieve what they had set out to achieve in the first place. Now that we know why execution matters, let's have a quick look at common pitfalls or mistakes that lead to execution failures. There are 4 key mistakes, I believe, that I've seen a lot of teams and a lot of PMs make. Number 1 is misalignment between teams. I cannot stress enough how important aligning with your teams is. And many times we see that cross-functional teams, stakeholders, your product leadership, all of them are not aligned, leading to a very fragmented and broken product execution. I'll give you an example. Imagine you're going to launch a set of features for your product, and your marketing team is working on creating a narrative for your product launch and also highlighting the value proposition of the experience. If you both are not aligned, it's going to lead to a failed product launch because there was no alignment. This is just one example, and it can occur between any and all stakeholders and teams. Second is poor prioritization. Focusing on low impact tasks, focusing on not the right things for your users already sets up your product for failure even before it has begun built. And hence, it's extremely important to get prioritization right. The third is also like lack of communication or poor communication. It's extremely important as product managers for you to consistently, clearly, transparently communicate with your teams, your stakeholders, your leadership on the progress of your product initiatives, on the impediments, risks, mitigation strategies, and how you're tracking against your goals. Without that, the communication failure is going to cause a lot of confusion and also lead to your product not being successful. The fourth is insufficient risk management. We all talk about doing a post-mortem after your product is shipped in order to get learnings on what we could have done better. But I do personally believe that it's equally important to predict things that could go wrong in order to identify risks and have mitigation plans in place. Oftentimes, teams don't do it, leading to insufficient risk management that shows itself very late in the game, leading to either delays or failed product launches. Finally, lack of clear goals and KPIs. You really want to have clear goals and metrics that will help you measure the progress you're making against your product goals. Without that, you are going to have misaligned teams. You're going to have teams that are not going to be motivated, and they might actually lose interest in the execution itself. It's almost like you're going on a trip, but you don't know what the destination is. It can be pretty frustrating. Now that we have seen common mistakes for execution failures, let's talk about key components, or rather pillars, that you really need to ace in order to get your execution right and in order to avoid these pitfalls. The first one is prioritization. I cannot stress enough the importance of this step. This is what sets the stage for the success of your product. You need to focus on what matters the most. Second is influence and alignment. Product management is not a one-man army. You need to take your army, your team, along the ride and ensure that you're delivering the best experience for your users. And you do this by leading with vision and aligning for impact and motivating and encouraging your team and have them be as invested in your vision as you are. The third is problem solving. Every challenge holds a solution. As a product manager, you need to be able to problem solve or set up a culture where your teams can problem solve with you in order to alleviate any challenges, any impact, and think very creatively and innovatively about how to solve it. Fourth, communication. There is no such thing as over communication. Clarity is what fuels progress and keeps everyone going and still aligned with what you have set out to achieve. Fifth is quality. It's not just important to deliver a flawless experience once, you need to do it every single time for your users to love the product that you build and also for your brand to have a perception of being a reliable brand that always delivers a quality experience. A great example of this is Apple. It's known for its quality. Now that we have looked at these 5 very key components, let's dig deeper into each of these and what they really mean from an execution standpoint. The first is prioritization. You need to focus on the highest impact product initiatives that solve most important user pain points. Seems very easy, right? And seems almost obvious. But in reality, when it comes to prioritizing and balancing between user outcomes, business goals, constraints from your engineering, timeline, scope, resources, a lot of times this might take a backseat. And as a PM, you need to constantly remind yourself and your team that your user needs and your user impact needs to be at the center of all your decision making. The second is to have a framework that you use that's very standardized across your product initiatives so that you're able to truly prioritize very objectively and not have very varying components that you're assessing when making prioritization. I personally like to use the RICE framework, which is risk, impact, confidence, and effort in order to prioritize my initiatives. I would say some of these might also depend on intuition and your experience working in a space or in an industry or solving products for a specific user segment, because not all the times you will have the data available in order to make decisions just based on the RICE framework. So it's good to know that, but still have a framework that you try to follow for the most part. Third is, as a PM, you need to be flexible, you need to be adaptable. You cannot be married to your solutions. I always like to say that be married to your problems for the users, not the solutions, because you should be able to change directions, priorities based on the feedback you get from your users, based on experiment results, based on macroeconomic trends, based on market trends, based on what your competitors are doing. And so you should always be on the lookout for these and be willing to pivot or shift as needed. Lastly, obsess on customer impact. That is the most important thing, and your business outcome will follow. Again, many times we have short-term versus long-term impact, and we try to make trade-off decisions. And sometimes we try to over-index on business outcomes at the cost of reduced customer impact. In short term, that might yield results, but in the long term, it's never a good idea. So always keep customers at the center of your prioritization. So if I have to summarize the key takeaway from this slide, always put your user impact first and adjust priorities as you gather feedback. Let's move on to the second one, influence and alignment. This is single-handedly a really, really important component that as PMs we need to get right. This is also the one that might take the most out of us emotionally and mentally, but it's the very important, crucial step in order to set up your product for success. It's very important for you to align your teams by reinforcing the vision and setting clear goals. When I say teams, these are your cross-functional teams like engineering, data science, design, marketing, legal, you name it, and any cross-functional team that you work with needs to really be bought into your vision. And it's your job as a product manager to very clearly state that vision and state very clear goals and ways to measure them. And it's not just enough to state it once, you need to keep repeating that. Second, you need to really have a good storytelling in order to really deliver your point around the vision and the value proposition for your users in order to create excitement and enthusiasm among your team members. If they are motivated and excited, they are going to make your vision and your strategy come to life and maybe make it come to life in a much better way than you had envisioned. Third, it's extremely important to be objective because you can't really build product experiences based on subjective opinions. It needs to be tied with data. It needs to be tied in the impact that you think you can create for your business and for your users. Also, leveraging data is very important when you have team members that are not sold on your vision, despite the storytelling, despite you communicating it clearly. And leveraging data is a great way for them to disagree and commit and contribute positively to your experience. And finally, fostering ownership through collaboration and shared decision making. You need to make your team members and your stakeholders feel like they are part of the decision making and their inputs are as much valued. It's a collaborative effort, and the collective wisdom of all of your cross-functional partners will be better than your own unique ideas sometimes. So it's really important for them to own and feel like, it's their vision and their product as well. I will say this, that if we invest in really focusing on getting this right, teams will come with their aim game and will really make your product execution successful. The key takeaway from this slide is to invest time in building alignment and excitement with your team and stakeholders, and they'll always deliver their best. The third is problem solving. It would have been so amazing if a product manager, all they had to do is write beautiful product requirement documents and then do a spec review with their cross-functional teams and call it a day. Well, problem solving and product execution are never linear. You need to anticipate challenges and resolve them proactively as a PM. You need to make decisions along the way confidently and also be very transparent on why and how you came up with the decision. This will foster more confidence from your team on you, and it will also kind of empower them to make similar decisions in the future since they understand the way you made decisions. The third is to evaluate trade-offs and take ownership of the outcome. A lot of times, PMs need to make the hard decision between choosing one or the other, where there could be one benefit to a decision, but it could also come at the cost of risking another metric or another part of the product experience. And as PM, we need to objectively make that decision and own that decision, whether it is successful or a failure. Finally, you need to ensure the team maintains momentum. You don't want them to be distracted by any changing priorities. You don't want them to be distracted by any constraints that come their way or any challenges that they might face or any dependencies that they might have. As a PM, your job is to also project manage and help unblock your team in many ways so they are focused on building the momentum and executing your experiences with quality and in time. The key takeaway from this slide is to proactively tackle challenges, make confident decisions, and keep your team moving forward. The fourth one, which is extremely important again, is communication. As I mentioned earlier, there is no such thing as over communication. It's important for four main reasons. One is it builds trust through regular, honest updates and transparency. Two, it is very important that you tailor your messaging to fit the needs of your audience. What updates you would give to an executive, to your manager, to your stakeholders, and to your team members needs to be very different depending on the information that's most relevant and most important for them. Third is you need to be a very transparent communicator because it's extremely important for you to be trustworthy. And the first step to do so is to be transparent. And you also need to very clearly outline your mitigation strategies in case things don't really go your way. The fourth is being consistent and providing clear updates. Consistency is the key, where you are able to foster strong relationships and you're able to build your credibility as a PM who is an excellent communicator and is always on top of things. The key takeaway from this slide is to be clear, honest communication that builds trust, drives alignment, and drives credibility. Quality, last but not the least, is a very important component, and it's extremely important for you to get your product quality right every single time in order to deliver experiences that customers love and want to come back to your app for. It also builds a reputation for your brand as being a reliable and high quality brand. Few things that you as a PM can do in order to ensure this is number one, incorporate and engage your quality assurance team members extremely early, right during spec reviews, and really encourage and motivate them to create detailed test cases. They almost need to have test cases that break your product experience before the customers do. And the second is you need to implement this culture of continuous testing. A lot of times teams wait till the end to find the final feature and then test it out. I think that's a recipe for disaster. It's extremely important as PMs for you to constantly test the small shippable components of your product and give feedback in order to make sure that they're building to the spec that you'd originally thought about. Also, dogfooding sessions where you're inviting multiple team members of the project to test and break your product is extremely effective. The third is to ensure consistent design and UX for a polished and bug-free product. Many times we are building features on top of features, and it's extremely important for you as a PM to think about the entire cohesive experience and not just look at your product feature in isolation. I always like to say this: put the hat of your customer and use the product for an entire use case that your users would be using your product for, even if you're shipping just part of that experience. This truly ensures that you have consistency in design, consistency in user experience, and there are no overlapping functionalities that might conflict with each other. The fourth one is to prepare mitigation plans for unforeseen bugs. Well, there are different reasons in which there could be bugs introduced that may have not been something that we had expected. And to have mitigation plans, like working with your engineering team to have like a lever that controls this experience so you can turn it off in case something goes south, is extremely important to do. Finally, you need to maintain high standards throughout the product lifecycle. Often we have this question from our engineering where they say, is this a must have or is this a nice to have? It's great to have an idea of what's an absolutely required versus what is a nice to have, but we cannot take delightful product experiences or UX experiences for granted every single time and deprioritize them. We need to maintain a high bar of how our users are able to find value in our product and get it right every single time. The key takeaway from this slide is to bring QA early, continuous testing, and consistently shipping a polished product will make your product that customers love. Now that we have looked at all the 5 different components that will make your product execution successful, I do want to highlight maybe certain additional things that you need to keep in mind for complex products. I do want to call out everything that we discussed so far still applies to complex products. These are just additional things you might need to do as a PM. The first one is you need to break down complex experiences into smaller, manageable features. What this means is many times a complex product might have multiple product features within it, and you need to be able to break them into smaller chunks of product features and decouple them as much as possible. Second, you would need to identify dependencies between them in order to prioritize and sequence the feature builds. If there are 5 features as part of your experience, you would need to understand which one needs to be built first versus second versus third in order to be able to sequence the build of that feature accordingly. Third, you need to ensure that there is appropriate resourcing and the timelines for smooth delivery. You don't want to invest a lot of time in building the entire experience and for you to be late to the market where your competitor has already built it out or your users no longer really need that solution. So you need to really maintain a balance about what is the most valuable component of my product and ship that out first and then launch other incremental features as a fast follow if needed. And finally, you need to have a QA and experimentation strategy to test these features and decouple the launches where possible. This is also very important for you to be able to de-risk as well as parallel path the execution of complex products. Lastly, I'm going to talk about few components which are equally important, but we never really speak much about it or invest a lot of time on getting it right. And this is what I like to call the intangibles. The first one is emotional intelligence. At the end of the day, we are all humans. and we are dealing and working with other humans. So we need to be able to identify when someone is frustrated, when someone is motivated, when someone has lost interest, and really also understand from their visual cues or body languages and truly use that to build strong relationships with your stakeholders. At the end of the day, the product managers who actually have strong relationships, who invest in emotional intelligence, are the ones who actually are able to deliver, influence, and have strong product execution. The second is decision making clarity. As PMs, you don't just need to prioritize the negotiables versus non negotiables for your product, but also tasks that are on your plate. You might have 100 things to do, but you need to be very clear on what needs your attention versus what does not need your attention at the moment. Third is adaptability. As I mentioned before, as PMs, we need to be really nimble and shift with changing market trends, experiment results that we uncover or what our users are saying. And we need to be very adaptable in order to always think creatively and move forward no matter the constraints. And adaptability is also a mindset where you don't want to be bogged down by things that are shifting or lose morale, because that will impact your team and at the end of the day, your execution. Fourth is intuition. Yes, we should be making data-driven decision all the time, but there is also product intuition where you know sometimes what will really work versus what will not work. And this is not just true when you're making product prioritization decision, but when you're also prioritizing what battles you would want to fight versus give up on with your stakeholders, with your cross-functional partners when there are disagreements or when you both have different opinions. The fifth one is trust and delegation. A lot of us might be managers, and so it's important for you to be able to delegate different product areas to your team and trust them and give them the autonomy to be able to deliver. Yes, you should be able to unblock them and give them inputs where needed, but you need to be able to trust and delegate. And for PMs who are not managers, you need to be able to trust and delegate even to your cross-functional partners and your stakeholders and allow them to do what they do best. And finally, time management. As PMs, at the end of the day, we only have limited time and we cannot do it all. So it's important to effectively manage time and only work on things that truly drive the most impact at the end of the day. With that, we come to the end of our presentation. I do want to call out that these are all components that we have spoken about, and it's extremely important to not just get one right, but to get all of them right. And with each project execution, you will have learnings and you will get better at acing each of these components. I hope this was truly helpful to all of you and you're able to find value in some of these insights and go and use that on your day-to-day job. Thank you again for joining this webinar. I would love to stay connected. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is Sandhya Ganesh. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope all of you have a great rest of your day.